So what you're saying is that in over 900 years of time and space, I, the Doctor, have been flying around with the brakes on without ever having to have them replaced.
And you're saying that I, the Master, have also been flying with my brakes on?
And the road, wait, have I flown a TARDIS on screen?
And I, the monk.
Who?
Who?
Oh, forget it.
Where is it? Okay.
Welcome, one and all, to the 63rd episode of an Unearthly podcast, featuring Time of the Angels and Flesh and Stone, recording live on July 11th, 2014. I am the
63rd?
man.
Wasn't last week the 64th?
No, because last week I referred to it as the 62th.
Hmm. I'm getting my time screwed up then.
Yeah, it's definitely the 63rd. I checked.
Then maybe
I
I
am
just
the.
came from the 64th and I'm doing them backwards.
You might be. I am the man in black, and with me are a guy being eaten by allergies, a Voltorb, and I don't have a funny way to introduce Erin today. Tim apologizes for missing yet another podcast, but I think he might be either cyber converting an old king or the cast of a Shakespearean play, something about that. Something about technology and Henry V. I don't know.
Me.
Uh, in the news, oh,
Why did
good
I become a
God, we have so
Voltorb?
much news. Because a Voltorb is a creature that spends the entire battle waiting to explode, which is what you will be until we start talking about rivers.
Okay, I take your point.
I figure a Voltorb is better known than an Electrode, because then people might be wondering if I was talking about the Pokemon or not.
I don't know though, with the rate of explosion I may be an armed nuclear warhead. Just saying.
Novelty
So,
nuclear warhead. Start the party off with a bang.
speaking of a bang, we have quite a bit of news. To start with, we have not yet talked about the most recent trailer, which some speculate may indicate a return of Davros.
No, it doesn't.
Speculations are
What?
abound, but yeah,
What?
we can't say for
Now,
sure.
if I listened very closely to that trailer, I played it at basically 3 speeds. I've listened to that voice, and that voice is pure Nick Briggs. And
The interesting thing about it, then, if it is Nick, then what is he playing? Because that is different than the normal Glass Dalek voice.
I can't really say, but that if you listen to that hatred, that is definite. That when he says hatred at the end, that is definitely Nick Briggs's vocal patterns.
I could also, if I could do a Christopher Eccleston impression, I could say, I probably will still say, since when do Daleks have a concept of soul?
But yeah, it's the beginning sounds like Julian Bleach, but as the voice goes on, it sounds more and more Nick Briggs. So it might have been Nick Briggs doing a Julian Bleach impression, but
It's entirely possible that Moffat said, listen, I want you to troll the audience into thinking that you're Julian Bleach.
yeah, it's
Possibly.
possible. But yeah, as it goes on, if Davros was actually there, it would have actually been Julian Bleach's voice, not Nick Briggs trying to sound like him.
Maybe if I see Nick Briggs at a convention, I'll give him some rice pudding for the impression.
Maybe there's a Dalek that got a bump on the head and actually thinks he's Davros.
Of course, on my hand, I kind of wish it would be Davros because If so, then this trailer could be interpreted as reenacting the Big Finish story where Davros was slowly turning into the Dalek Emperor, and I would kind of love to see that on screen. Even if
I don't know. I think a Dalek with delusions of creatorhood grandeur would actually be kind of interesting.
Yeah, but then, I mean, then there would be all the accusations, possibly rightfully so, of ripping off the big bad from Series 1. Because he also had such delusions.
No, he thought he was freaking God.
Davros already thinks that.
True. Davros, yeah, generally does consider himself to be God.
I just think it'd be great if there was an entire episode where the Doctor thought he was, fighting against Davros, and at the end of it, it turns out to be a Dalek with delusions.
So like a reversal of Remembrance of the Daleks, then.
Yeah, exactly.
That'd be something. As for our next bit of big news, this is not an official release by BBC. In fact, it is the opposite of an official release by BBC. And I'm sure unless you've been living under an internet rock for the past week, you already know what I'm talking about.
Yes.
5 scripts for Series 8, and the BBC is not saying which ones and is asking everybody else not to say which ones, were leaked due to essentially a very poor file sharing plan.
Is that what did it?
Horribly awry. From what I understand, it was kept onto a file sharing server by, I think it was BBC Miami, when they were being sent over to be translated for South American release. And people found them on Google and proceeded immediately to start downloading the shit out of them.
Of course.
Womp womp.
Pack of piranhas.
Mm-hmm.
That's what the internet is. Haven't you figured that out yet?
They're no longer there, but they are on the internet, and the BBC is begging everybody to please not spoil them. At some point, we might give some impression of them, although if any of us has that now, I imagine we probably wouldn't have much time to, as we have a lot to talk about today.
Maybe another time.
Yeah.
Until then, spoilers.
I certainly have not read them as of the recording of this.
Neither have I.
Our next bit of Series 8 news is Frank Cottrell Boyce, an award-winning children's novelist, screenwriter, and writer of, I believe it was the most recent Olympics. I mean, not some form of Olympic opening. Is confirmed as a writer for Series 8, and of course, I'm sure he's already written his episode, considering that I think filming is hopefully done by this point or pretty close to it.
They should be in post because they got, they might have the last few, the last block in progress. Because they've got, once the series starts, they've got 13 weeks before they need to put the last ones out.
If it's anything like Series 6, we're still waiting for Moffat to submit his last couple of scripts. Because apparently that was a thing, which resulted in pretty much rough drafts being shot, and we could tell by watching the episodes.
This explains much.
It was the 2012 Olympics. I think, were those the ones in Britain?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so he was a writer of the opening ceremony for the British Olympics, and I was not aware that the opening ceremony involved a writer, but I don't know sports. I don't do sports.
It's become more and more a dramatic thing in recent days.
Oh.
To the point that, it needs to be written.
From what I understand,
I mean, the fact that they had Mr. Bean show up in the orchestra was something that I think had to be scripted out a little bit.
From what I understand, everybody in the stands disappeared, and David Tennant brought them back. Something.
Okay.
There was a little ship powered by love, I think, that he had to launch with the Olympic torch.
Well, that's way out of date. You apparently missed the Matt Smith version of that.
What, did the Doctor break the first law during the Olympics?
Apparently, because there's another mini-sode called Good as Gold. and it takes place during the 2012 Olympics. Either that, or they both were there and just missed each other. I'm not certain.
It's possible.
But as for Cottrell Boyce, let me see if I don't know if I don't have any of you heard of him?
You mean Frank Boyce?
I guess. Well, they refer to his last name in the article as Cottrell Boyce, even though it's apparently I don't know if it's a middle name and a last name or both.
It's Frank Cottrell Boyce. It's his full name.
The article says it treats Cottrell Boyce as the last name, even though there's no hyphen. I don't know if it's the way.
He's wrote sequels to Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. Millions, Framed, Cosmic Desirable, The Unforgotten Coat, Chitty Chitty Bang Bang Flies Again, Chitty Chitty Bang Bang and the Race Against Time, Chitty Chitty Bang Bang Over the Moon. So basically that's what he's known for. Except he's also done some pretty serious screenplays by the look of it. He's been the scriptwriter for Coronation Street since 1991. And that's, British soap opera.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
If it's ain't good, that's not a question.
Oh, his episode is featuring a cast of child actors from various sources.
Well, that kind of goes with Moffat's whole fairy tale theme, which I thought he had dropped for the new Doctor.
But I mean, he's also a children's novelist, so it does make sense that he's writing an episode with a lot of children in it.
Mm-hmm. We'll see how it comes out.
Yeah, last time we went child heavy, it turned out pretty bad.
I don't know. The last time we went, what are you thinking of?
The Nightmare in Silver? Not Nightmare in Silver.
No,
the Cyberman episode this last year.
That was Nightmare in Silver, and that wasn't really child heavy. There were two.
I would consider.
Still, it was very heavily child focused.
Time of the Doctor was
for a while.
Child medium.
I mean, when I think child heavy, I think of the next Doctor where you had the whole workhouses going on.
Ironically, the only source that they mention any of the children come from that I recognize is the Woman in Black. And that was pretty child heavy considering who all the victims were.
Okay, I think we've pretty much covered as much as we can on this one.
Yeah.
None of us have seen any of his work.
I was going to mention one thing related to that, and that's just that the fact that they're still announcing writers this late in the game means pretty much that, I mean, I consider it to be obvious. I don't know if some people even paid attention to it or not, but the fact that they're still announcing writers pretty much says Moffat or someone had a script somewhere with each date that they were announcing each writer to make sure that there was enough news to be announcing somebody pretty much every week for the past few months. That's
well,
the
at
only
least that means he's putting effort into it.
Into the promotion. We know he's putting a lot of effort into the promotion. Whether he's putting the same amount of effort into the script editing is something we'll find out.
Remains to be seen.
Mm-hmm.
If the second half of Series 7 is any bar standard,
or the second half
can't
of Series
do much
6.
worse without causing
without starting to create without World War III or seizures.
Now, we were mentioning Cybermen episodes before, and Doctor Who blogs would like us to do some Cybermen thinking of our own, and this is, of course, there is the Doctor Who, the Cybermen ebook coming out. By the way, you can listen to a minute of the audiobook narrated by Nick Briggs on BBC Blogs, now that I mention it. But BBC Blogs wants you to go on there and vote for your favorite classic Who Cyberman story. And of course, I have already voted. I'm not sure if I can still see the choices. I think I can.
What did you vote for?
The one story where the Cybermen are treated as Cybermen before Russell T Davies got a hold of them. The 10th Planet.
Wow. That's going way back.
Now, do you guys want to vote before I give the results so far? The choices, by the way, are the 10th Planet, the Moon Base, the Tomb of the Cybermen, the Wheel in Space, the Invasion, Revenge of the Cybermen, Earthshock, the Five Doctors, which I forget about when I count Cybermen stories. You can probably guess why. Attack of the Cybermen, and Silver Nemesis.
So basically, every classic Cybermen story.
Earthshock Invasion. Earthshock Invasion. Oh.
I mean, the problem with Earthshock, I mean, it has some very effective points as an episode, but as a Cyberman episode, it has a leader that, is glorying in the idea of torturing the Doctor for his past defeats of the Cybermen.
And to be honest, if you go too robotic, you lose. You get what was essentially Revenge of the Cybermen, and it didn't hold up very well.
Well, mind you, no. The issue with Revenge of the Cybermen is they didn't even bother to do any modulation on their voices.
Well, that and they also sounded bored.
That's because there was no modulation on their voices. They were acting as if they were expecting their voices to be modulated, and they weren't.
Is Revenge? Is that the Tom Baker one?
Yes.
That's the Tom Baker one, Erin, yeah.
I thought the problem with Revenge was that they took ancient costumes and tried to just wear them again.
Among other things, yes.
I don't know. I still think of the Invasion and Revenge Cybermen as being the classic Cybermen look.
I will argue that I will state that the Revenge Cybermen still looked the part at least, but didn't look as updated as it could have been.
They did some minor touch-ups on the outfit, but it was minor.
Mm-hmm.
But I was mentioning earlier. I'm not kind of to these guys off stream that if you count Silver Nemesis and Earthshock as having the same costumes, which I pretty much do, it was just a paint job, then prior to Russell T Davies, the '80s Cybermen, with 4 episodes, if you count 5 Doctors, had the longest run of most episodes with one costume, whereas RTD RTD and Moffat together kind of blow that out of the water with the Cybus/Cyber Legion costume. It's appeared quite a few more times.
So, shall we show I'm already showing them, by the way, the percentages I see here.
Oh, okay.
I haven't voted yet, so your percentages are wrong.
Well, let me see.
Well,
does it say how many people have voted?
Now I've voted, so, yeah.
Everybody refresh. Randy's vote might have swung the scales.
I doubt it. Anyway. I doubt it. I'm looking at those percentages, and yeah.
So, the 10th Planet, the sole first Doctor episode on the list, has 9%, and it just refreshed while I was speaking. Thank you very much. Where'd the percentages go? Anybody want to pick up?
10th Planet is 9%. Moonbase with 3%. Tomb of the Cybermen, a whopping 27%. Almost over a quarter of all the votes are at Tomb at the moment.
I should point out that 20 of that 27% probably came from one scene, and there we go. I got my percentages back. The Wheel in Space has 2%, and that was that Zoe's premiere.
Yes, it was, and it's also a missing episode.
Mm-hmm.
Which is probably why it's 2%.
Yeah. I'm surprised the Moonbase is low, because that was just released.
I think is also a missing episode.
Except it was released on DVD very recently with an animated send-up. I'll be showing it at GeekCon.
Ooh.
It might be that not a lot of people have had a chance to see it.
Yeah, probably.
And of course, the Invasion, as the epitome of 60s Cybermen, at least so it's proclaimed, has 11%. Revenge of the Cybermen has 6%.
Yeah, that is a troubled episode. I like the episode as it's written. It's just the costumes or
it's the execution of the actual video that is the problem.
Earthshock, which already had the reputation of being the most popular color Cybermen episode of the classic era, gets that in its vote with 18%.
Mm-hmm.
The 5 Doctors, which I guess you could kind of call a Cybermen episode if you squint and tilt your head to the side, gets 13%.
It's just way too busy, Cybermen are taking up a good chunk of the villainy in there.
Mm-hmm.
Attack of the Cybermen has 5%. And Silver Nemesis actually beats out 3 of the other episodes with 7%.
And that's a horrific episode. I like Attack of the Cybermen far better than I like Silver Nemesis, just saying.
Yeah, I've seen Attack of the Cybermen. I haven't seen Silver Nemesis yet.
I'm kind of wondering if those 7%, if that's the only classic Who Cybermen episode they've watched.
Possibly. Either that or they're just hardcore Sylvester McCoy fans.
Every episode has its fans. I mean, I think the Twin Dilemma has its fans. I'm a I'm a hardcore Sylvester McCoy fan, and I voted for Hartnell. So
Yeah, I'm just trying to figure
Then
out
again,
why a
yeah,
crap.
then again, there are people voting on BBC blogs that might have grown up with Sylvester McCoy, so they would more inclined to vote for him than I would.
Anywho.
Yep, and on to our next bit. Speaking of Sylvester McCoy, I don't know if that was on purpose, but following in our own Welshmerts, apologize if I pronounced that terribly wrong, but I do not know German or even if that is a word with a meaning or a name. But that is a new behind-the-scenes look at the Sylvester McCoy years.
Okay.
So let me see if I can go ahead and read the publisher's blurb. Doctor Who is now in its 51st year and enjoying its 12th, 13th, 14th latest of many actors to take on the lead role. I see what you did there. Every era is different. Each actor brings their own style to the role. Each producer and script editor makes their mark. And probably Sylvester McCoy's era is one of the most divisive among fandom. It's a dynamic 3 years blowing cobwebs off the memory of recent cancellation. The Doctor and the series develop over 47 episodes until, finally, sadly, just as things are on the up, the show is cancelled again. The Auton, as far as I can tell, no relation to the monster Auton, guide to the stories behind the Seventh Doctor's era answers all the questions fans haven't been asking. Cleaning robots. What can you actually clean with a drill and a saw blade? We tried. Who built the Ronnie's lair? How long did it take? Harry's 70 plus minus. How old is his wife if she's having twins in a few weeks? I'm not sure I get that reference. Why?
Who was it?
It says Harry.
Oh, Harry. Was
it says Sullivan, but I don't know if that's right or not.
No. It was from Remembrance of the Daleks, the guy that owned the cafe that was like a third of the scenes.
Oh, okay.
And one of the scenes, they ask why he's not there, and it's his wife's having twins, or something like that.
Why is the psychic circus so called? Why do Rezzies eat Kangs when they've got a ready supply of tea cakes, crumpets, muffins, basil, and fresh cream?
Because you really can't. You really just need meat sometimes.
Now that we
crave it.
Now that we have a special weapons Dalek, should we relabel all the other Daleks? Yeah, Moffat and Gaddis tried.
Yes, they did.
And how did Delta fit into Mel's dress?
Very carefully.
We worry about these things, so you don't have to. Apparently, they're fans of the nostalgia trip. It's been a long time since Auton visited Doctor Who. Aided by the illustrations of Andy X. Cable, it's time to get it out of our system. The book is released on August 23rd, a fitting date for a Doctor Who release.
And deliberate, I would bet.
Probably.
Hopefully it's being sold at GeekCon. Maybe someone can meet us there with a copy of it.
I doubt it, but you never know.
Anybody want to say anything that blurb didn't?
No.
Bees, my god. I heard a chuckle there.
And on to our next bit of news. There was a birthday, and it's one birthday that both Americans and British can agree on how to write it on paper. Unfortunately, there's not much need to write it on paper because, as Randy was so fond of reminding me, the celebrator is no longer with us. So,
he's dead, Dave.
So happy birthday to the third Doctor, the first one to wear 3D glasses. Oh shoot, I just referenced that again. Sorry, Randy.
Yeah.
I just realized what the reference was again. Yep.
I didn't do it on purpose.
That's what they all say.
Just to make Randy hurt and wins.
While I turn Bill into a cripple.
Watch Randy do it live, ladies and gentlemen.
Will he be a cripple or a blood?
I don't know. I'm just planning on making his arms and legs bend the wrong way.
So yeah, John.
So you have scoliosis.
John Pertwee would have been 95 4 days ago.
just slightly younger than my great-grandmother.
That is dwarfed by our next bit of news, and unfortunately this is the episode that brings Lost Stories back to Doctor Who. But it has been quite a good run for this actress, and by quite a good run, I mean more than 1.25 good runs. Zora Segal, I apologize if I pronounced that poorly, died at the age of 102 this week. The actress was in both Marco Polo and The Crusade, alongside the First Doctor.
Yeah, that's one hell of a good run.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so she was getting a start on a second run, but couldn't make it.
Dear God, I'm looking at a picture. When was this picture made? Because it's black and white, and she already looked like Cologne from Ranma.
Well, she would have been about 60 when she first appeared in Marco Polo.
You looking at this picture, guys?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, I
She
think
does. She looks like Elder Cologne, man.
I think a lot of
300-year-old ghoul.
I think a lot of these they just show them in black and white for mood rather than it actually having been a black and white photo.
Old mummy.
No, she was in Marco Polo, not the Aztecs. So,
Slap you, Bill.
Why slap me?
Because you gotta make a bad joke about episode names.
I made a bad joke? Have you listened to what Randy's been saying about?
Yes, and they're all random remarks.
If you'd referenced,
I love.
They're all
I love
Rama
how
quotes.
sensitive we are.
it would have been a bad joke if he had said pyramids of Mars instead of the Aztecs. Just saying. That one actually had mummies.
Crying for their bacon sandwiches.
Yes, indeed.
This is why you listen to us, to hear these things.
Oh,
On her 102nd birthday, Segal spoke of the future. I am preparing myself for death. When I go to sleep, I try to keep myself smiling, so that when I die, I have a smile on my lips. I want an electric cremation. I don't want any poems or fuss after that. And for heaven's sake, don't bring back my ashes. Flush down the toilet if the crematorium refuses to keep them. If they tell you that I am dead, I want you to give a big laugh. So,
Hey,
I guess,
if I die, I want a party, man.
so I guess she's concerned about revivification rituals.
Which does take us back to the Aztecs.
Yeah.
Ay.
If we might need to bring Sarah Michelle Gellar and a big hammer into the picture if she's that concerned.
No, I'm serious. If I die, I want a party with blackjack and hookers. On second thought, forget the party.
There's blackjack and hookers.
Our next bit of news that is so we've had birthdays come back. Apparently, birthdays come back and deaths come back on the same week. And for once, we don't have any awards to talk about. But we do have a premiere to talk about.
Doctor Who needs to keep winning awards then, because apparently it keeps people from dying.
Yes, it does. This is true. Well, what happened? Come on, more awards, guys. It's convention
Give them more awards! Stop letting them die!
It's convention season. There has to be awards going on. So, the world premiere of Deep Breath, the Series 8 first episode, will be debuting in Cardiff on August 7th, which is also the beginning of the global tour that Capaldi, Coleman, and I'm not sure who else will be taking around the world to prepare for Series 8's launch.
I'm thinking it might be Moffat as well, but he might be busy. But it's at the very least those two.
It'll be at least those two, and Moffat will probably be in and out whenever he can be available.
Yeah, if our con was 2 weeks earlier, I would have wrote them to invite them.
Yeah.
But instead, they're going to be back in England.
Now, when I first saw them posting this image talking about it, I thought maybe Cardiff was being invaded. I thought maybe those wooden structures were like tripods from War of the Worlds or something, but alas, that was not the case.
Bill, getting your hopes up so quickly. And why would wooden structures be aliens anyway? The only wooden structure I know of that's alien-made is the TARDIS itself. And only on the outside.
Oh, that's right. Before we do our last bit of news, we just had a mention only. For those of you who have Retro TV and are waiting for Doctor Who to start, it has announced its launch date of August 4th. So, enjoy. And our last bit of news, which is pretty similar to our third or something bit of news, as we had a lot of bits of news. Comedian and actor Sanjeev Bhaskar is apparently going to be in the series finale, which implies that it has been written, so we might not be looking at a Whitting of River Song situation. Then again, hopefully it should have been shot already, so hard to tell.
Either way, I'm hoping it's in progress. Just get it done, guys.
Moffat says that he's completely thrilled that Sanjeev Bhaskar is coming to the aid of the Doctor. The danger is never deadlier than in a final episode, and the Time Lord is going to need all the help he can get.
So we'll see.
Yeah. So,
is he going to be playing himself? Is he going to be playing an alien? We don't know yet.
And I think we've gotten through the news.
Okay.
Yes.
I think it only took us about a half an hour. So we did good. Normally with half that amount of news, we spend a half an hour.
Yep.
That was kind of a marathon for news.
And now we get to our feature presentation, The Time of the Angels. Does anybody care to give a summary?
Do I have to?
Yes.
Moffat brings back angels, everything goes boom.
No, that's a behind-the-scenes note. Oh. Okay.
Is it though? Is it behind the scenes or is it in our faces?
Matt, I'm trying to compose myself to do the summary.
If it's in our faces, it's not moving. Whereas if it's behind the scenes, it moves.
I'm basically trying to swallow back a bit of bile here. So please. I don't want to start spitting venom during the actual summary. So, if I recall, it starts out with the Doctor and Amy visiting a museum. Why? Because they're museums and they're interesting. The Doctor is looking through and he's looking for various pieces, and one of the pieces he talks about is a black box from a ship, which we flash back, was it like 300 years, something like that? 400 years? Where we see basically somebody breaking into a ship. The person is eventually revealed to be River Song, and she is trying to get to that very same black box and starts basically defacing it with these symbols. The Doctor, looking at said symbols in the future, recognizes them as being Old High Gallifreyan, which he says is very hard, and, that's the language that's, moved stars and all this, and Amy asks what it says, and it says, "Hello, sweetie." The Doctor reviews the data on the black box and basically sees the fact that the person that's doing this is River Song, who pauses to mug at the camera as it's doing this. She is confronted by a guy that's warning her to stop. Guns are drawn. She says that she's seen what he has in the hold, and this ship would never reach its destination. She then rattles off some coordinates to the screen, which is a cue to the Doctor to pick her up. She then blows herself out the airlock, is pulled into the TARDIS, and basically tells the Doctor to follow that ship. The Doctor, reluctantly and with some teeth grinding, does so. Amy, of course, is befuddled by who this person is, but the Doctor eventually acquiesces, and we wind up on... Anybody remember the name of the planet?
It escapes me.
I can't remember half the episode.
Planet Rock Quarry.
Yeah, it was your typical rock quarry set.
Where the locals have two heads, the statues don't.
Yes, the locals have two heads.
I remember the name of the locals is
Alfava Matraxis. Alfava Matraxis is the name of the planet. And, after proving to River that he does know what he's doing, they walk out and they see basically this giant temple with a spaceship sticking out the top. River then calls down some friends, the clerics, who basically inform the Doctor that the ship contained a weeping angel, and they are going to go in and neutralize it. Because of the ship, the radiation spewing from the ship would be making the angel more powerful. Their plan is to blast through the catacombs under the temple and come up to confront the angel, which should be in the ship. Meanwhile, River shows the Doctor a video of the angel taken from the hold, and then they go out to examine some stuff while Amy remains in there with the video playing. As Amy is looking around, the video starts moving slowly, one loop at a time. Amy notices this in shock, tries to contact the Doctor and everything, but the room is sealed. And eventually she's looking at the angel staring at her at the face. It starts coming out of the video, and she starts screaming. The Doctor manages to shut it down, but as Amy's leaving, she keeps rubbing her eyes as if something's gone wrong. A book they're reading mentions that anything that's a recording of an angel becomes an angel, which is how the video was able to do this. They go and they blast their way into the catacombs, as mentioned, where they find a whole bunch of these statues standing around. Apparently, they look to be standing around the graves. The Doctor and them go on because they don't look like angels. Only a little farther in, he makes the realization that the natives to this planet had two heads and the statues didn't. The statues are all very badly damaged angels. And the ship crashing there was an attempt by the Weeping Angel to rescue them. Two members have already run off and gotten killed, and a third follows shortly. The angel uses the voice of the third to contact the Doctor and basically, in a way, taunt him as they flee under the ship. The angels are all coming, and it makes some statements that basically pisses off the Doctor, who then borrows a gun and shoots the globes on the top of the ship, telling everybody to jump. We regain later in part 2 with the fact that the artificial gravity on the ship was still working, and the jump just basically had them switch gravity fields. So now they're on the hull of the ship. They go in, but are being followed by the angels pounding on the door. They work their way to the secondary bridge, and for a moment they're safe, but even magnetically sealed, the angels start forcing the locks on the door. The Doctor realizes that there's another way through the oxygen exchange, which turns out to be a giant forest on the ship, but not just any forest, a cyber tree forest. Basically your oxygen and data transfer all in one. Amy, meanwhile, has started in her conversation including numbers going from 10, 9, 8. The Doctor realizes that something's horribly wrong with Amy, and talking to the angel who's taken the voice of Bob, the person it killed, discovers that yes, even if you look into the eyes of an angel will basically transfer itself into your eyes, and it's taking over Amy from within. Doctor has Amy close her eyes so that she can't, so the angel can't control her, and they proceed carefully into the center of this forest. However, one of the things that the doctor notices, or the angel points out to him more precisely, is that there is a crack above the secondary bridge, much like the crack that was on Amy Pond's wall. This one's glowing relatively nastily. The angels are gathering around it, trying to suck up the time energy from it, something that would be actually very bad. As they retreat, the light begins growing bigger and bigger and bigger. The doctor and River and the head of the clerics head to the primary bridge, but Amy, who is in bad shape due to the angel attack, can't follow, and the rest of the clerics are sent guard on her. The clerics start checking out these one at a time, and as they get too close, everybody except Amy forgets about their existence. Finally, the last one leaves, leaving Amy alone. She's very frightened. And the doctor, meanwhile, is trying to set things up to get them to escape, to save everybody. But he realizes that he's made a mistake. The light basically removes you from time as if you never existed. And so he begins over the voice to instruct Amy to the primary bridge. The problem is the angels are now everywhere. It takes Amy a bit of staggering, but eventually she gets to relative safety of the primary bridge. And the angels have begun draining the power from the trees and draining the power from the ship in order to get stronger. The thing is, the doctor realizes that this is a fundamental mistake because the gravity's still on, and they're still using the artificial gravity. So he has River and Amy hold on to something. The head cleric has already gotten himself killed by this point. And as the artificial gravity fails, all the angels get sucked into the crack, which is enough power to close it. The doctor then proceeds. The doctor and River then beams back to the ship because it was revealed during the process that she was a prisoner and that she was in a prison for essentially murder. She murdered the greatest man she'd ever known. And that's pretty much where we leave off the episode, all the important parts. I am making this as abrupt as possible so we can get on to the actual ranting. Okay, so where do we start?
I'm sending an image to Matt right now of Jason Mewes in front of the TARDIS.
Why are you sending Matt this image?
Because I found it while you were talking. And it.
Okay. And this couldn't wait till after the podcast?
Well, I figured it
Just
could.
saying.
I could figure it would make sense on the stream. I don't know. There we go. Maybe I can.
Anyway, where do we
Okay.
start on
Even
this?
start, yeah.
Where to begin on this flying
honestly,
turkey?
Where I would start is that I kind of think that the names of the episodes should have been switched, but someone was too lazy to take that one quote and move it to the second episode. Yeah, I said it. That's where I start.
I kind of
Okay.
feel that it would have been a better introduction to the Nymans, or reintroduction to them.
Yeah,
With
but
all
Moffat
the-
We
really.
can start there. This is an episode with a lot of interesting ideas that have nothing to do with Weeping Angels.
Yeah.
Pretty much. I mean, this to me is the point where Moffat started going wrong.
Yeah, and actually, yeah. I think we mentioned this off the podcast, but not on it. But this is the first episode where Moffat does not create a new monster to fit his plot. He should have.
He should have. he should have brought back a classic monster or something, but he basically tried to shoehorn the Weeping Angels into this idea.
And you notice,
Yeah.
like, a lot of the ideas are interesting. The problem is they ruin the angels because the angels already had enough ideas. Whereas nothing that they do here, other than freezing when you look at them, is reminiscent of anything they did in Blink.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty
They
much.
come off here as way too god mode. I mean, we're watching Amy looking at this 4-second clip of an angel sitting there, and the angel starts moving in a pre-recorded clip. And then there's the whole, you look at it, or you look at an angel, you become an angel. This wasn't an issue. I mean, if this was an issue, what's her face? Sally Sparrow would have become an angel.
Yeah, didn't Sally Sparrow take photos of angels too?
Yes.
I think so.
Actually,
yes.
as a matter of fact.
Yeah, that's another thing. You're gonna tell me no one's ever taken a photo of a weeping angel statue before? Which
Sally Sparrow took a look at it.
Not to mention another episode that comes later that I could mention of a statue that a lot of people have taken photos of.
Yeah, let's not talk about that until we get there.
Actually, we've already been there.
We've gotten there already, but still.
Actually, we've been there. We've been there. We've done that. We don't need to talk about it again.
Yeah.
See our rant on Angels Take Manhattan, which is going to be a lot of the same rant, but we don't need to add that to this rant.
Except this one is better quality because we had some technical issues back then.
Yeah, well, part of the issue we're having right now is this is the point where River Song goes from being an okay character to Queen Annoying Bitch.
Before we get to River, because I think we might as well go step by step since there's a few things. What do you guys think?
Well, yeah, that's why I started with River, because we get introduced to her first in the episode.
The first step before that, what do you guys think of the idea that the Doctor loves museums because of how he keeps score?
That was something River brought up.
Amy, I think, brought it up first. Yeah, Amy brought it up first. Because she was like, why do you love museums so much? And he's like, oh, that one's wrong. Oh, I saved that one. Oh, that one's wrong too. She's like, oh, it's how you keep score. And then River said it later.
Okay. But no, it's more... I don't really think it's how he keeps score. To be honest, the Doctor hasn't been... We've never seen the Doctor in a history museum before this.
To be honest,
ever,
yes.
In the history of the show. I mean, we've seen him in art museums.
Yeah, the only history museum I don't know if you wouldn't even call it a history museum. It was a private museum underground, and that was not why he went there.
And he was in a space museum before, but he landed there by accident.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not like he deliberately tried to go to these museums. We've never seen this before.
Although still, River states, at least speaking of what she understands of the Doctor's character, having presumably known him for years and in the future, that the one place you can always count on the Doctor eventually showing up is a museum.
Yeah, and that really doesn't make any sense from what we know.
So maybe it's an 11th Doctor obsession that happens mainly
I think so.
Actually, I can kind of retcon that. After the Pandorica thing, he might have gotten paranoid and started going to every museum to find more clues.
Then why is this one here pre-Pandorica?
Because.
We're off to see the Doctor, the wonderful Doctor of Who.
Apparently, that was David Whittaker's main inspiration as to how the Doctor should act back in 1964.
That's fine. I mean, I think of the Doctor as, a touch of the Wizard, a touch of Willy Wonka. There's a whole bunch of things that there's just a smidgen of here and there.
Thank you for. I was going to say, I'm like, a whole bunch of things that the Doctor is being touched by, and I'm like, I don't know. I don't want to.
Doctor looks up. I don't want to touch him anymore. Here, you touch it.
Now, Doctor, show us on the doll where the bad man touched you. Anyway, no, I'm not really a fan of the whole museum thing. Moffat seemed to basically ass pull it. And that's a good chunk of that's part of my problem with Moffat's writing is it's like this because I say so.
Yeah, and the thing is, I could see that being worked into the Doctor's character, like,
but
it's not.
It's dropped like a bomb on the character.
Like, if he had whispered it into Russell's ear in, like, 2006, and we just started him going into, like, a museum and a season, then it would be easy. Then I could really buy it.
I could see it for Colin Baker's Doctor, too. Because Colin Baker's Doctor's a raving egomaniac.
And yeah, he would do that.
Tom Baker might on occasion. But I really can't. I really couldn't see Peter Davidson doing it.
No.
Sylvester
McCoy would have left a clue. Like, it would have been like Men in Black 2 when they showed up at Agent K's old house and he's like, oh, by the way, I have an armory here. That would be Sylvester McCoy going to a history museum. Mm-hmm. By the way, that's not really a mummy.
And Pertwee would consider them a whole bunch of rubbish. I just realized something they might have been foreshadowing, because there is the Doctor does end up in a history museum in a literal. No, that's not even the Doctor. That's Amy. The foreshadowing shot itself in the foot. That wasn't the Doctor. That's Amy that ended up in the history museum. Yep.
Although the Doctor did show up.
They messed up their own possibility of foreshadowing.
Nope, it's not real. I don't think it's foreshadowing. I think it's just something that Moffat decided this must be what the character does, and just imperiously dropped it on the character.
Although I'm wondering, knowing what we know of some seasons, I'm kind of wondering, do you think the script for The Big Bang had been written yet, and he knew if it was going to be the Doctor or Amy?
I have no idea.
Not a clue.
I don't try to fathom what goes through his mind now. I think he might have had a rough idea at best.
The inner workings of Moffat's brain.
So I think we've discussed the museum as much as we can.
So yes, now we get to River Song. Who knows Old High Gallifreyan?
So now that you've watched Silence in the Library, Forest of the Dead, and now you've watched this one, just a couple of weeks apart.
Everybody kick off your shoes.
Do you get to see why River Song has annoyed me so much in the past few seasons?
I've actually described it. I was posting on Phil Sandifer's blog the other day. He posted his review of The Wedding of River Song, and I was like, he was he's basically talked over time about how he thinks it's, compared to other episodes of similar quality, unfairly criticized. And I mentioned, I think a lot of the hate that the season and the episode get is that they're focused on a character who spent her first 2 appearances insulting everyone who likes Doctor Who.
Pretty much.
First she insulted all the David Tennant fans in Series 4. Now she insults all of the TARDIS fans in Series 5.
Mm-hmm. Well, yes. That particular line was one Moffat should not have written. There is no sound other than the Doctor Who theme as iconic to Doctor Who as the sound of the TARDIS.
By now, the sonic screwdriver is, but it wasn't always.
Well, the thing is, the sonic screwdriver's had about 4 sounds over the course of the last 50 years.
Yeah.
But the sound it's had over the past 9 years, if you make that sound, someone will hear it and think Doctor Who. Now, but
no,
it wasn't.
I would still say that the TARDIS sound is even more iconic than the screwdriver sound
because of longevity.
No, it's just there's no other sound like it.
By the way, I should mention, I'm saying this, but anyone who's listened to the podcast for a long time, when I've forgotten to turn off my phone, knows what my ringtone when I receive a text message or an email is.
Mm-hmm.
It's the TARDIS.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've had that ringtone at one point or
And
another, I think.
And I love having that ringtone because it's a great way to start conversations. You get an email. Is that the TARDIS? Yes, it is. How
Did
you
they-
identify things.
Huh. So they've not used that sound ever since then, huh?
No, yes, they have.
What?
Oh, they
they
have.
have.
Yeah,
It's
good.
continued. I think there
Okay.
there have been times when he intentionally makes a silent landing for stealth, but he
Uh-huh.
also that was also when he was invisible and the chameleon circuit apparently worked. Which
I think this is the
Oh,
first,
I shouldn't say that because I think that's the next episode we're covering.
possibly, but no, it's not. But we'll deal with it later. Anyway, the issues are the fact that the Doctor, this was the reason that it hasn't come up again is the fact that the second this episode aired, the internet went on fire with the people that bitched about that particular line. And Moffat went, whoa, okay. And it just never came up again. That's Moffat's way of handling it. It just doesn't come up again. But the fact that it was one of the first things out of the mouth of River Song branded her as...
Yeah, that entire scene, I could imagine being very rage-inducing. I mean...
Yes, I'm
Still
watching
don't get
this...
why it was necessary. Like, even after having watched all of the other episodes with River, I don't get why she needs to fly the TARDIS in a Mary Sue-ish way. I can
Yeah.
kind of get, okay, even though she's not Gallifreyan, she can fly the TARDIS because she has genetic instability from being born there. Fine, part-time Lord bullshit, whatever. But why does she need to somehow...
It is bullshit, Bill.
Yes, but it's bullshit that I can put up with. Versus all of a sudden she needs to be, extreme Mary Sue, ridiculous, superpowered, fly the TARDIS better than anyone who's ever flown it before.
Yeah.
And
That's
she's
not-
smug about it.
Yeah.
That's what's even more annoying is the entire time she is smug as hell.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and the thing is, if she had done if this had been a time crash thing where she was basically, I know how to do that because you taught me because you watched me doing it type of thing, I could probably put up with that a little better than how smug she is just knowing it for no reason.
Well, Amy asks her how she learned to fly the TARDIS like that. She's like, I learned from the best. And the Doctor starts printing himself, and River immediately has to cut him down.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And then, of course, we find out a few episodes later, I think. Oh no, we find out it might be the following season that the TARDIS taught her how to fly it because Moffat.
Yes.
Yeah. Doesn't he even try to reprimand her about using the teleporter, and then she smugly told you it would work once it finally works.
He's like, it's broken. It's not going to work. Stop wasting your time. And she just fixes it off screen. Like, see?
Yeah, she is. I mean, this is the point where, River Song was at least a decent character in Silence in the Library, Forest of the Dead. Some people didn't like her, but she was a decent character. She was decently written.
Whereas
River
Here
in
she
this
is...
episode, I have one phrase to describe someone like River in this episode. Give me your character sheet.
Oh, yeah.
Give me the character sheet. There's something not right here.
How did you succeed in that repair check? A natural 20 would not have done it.
You're only a level 5 character. How do you have 9 ranks and everything? Yeah, it's bad. She comes into this so overpowered, and yeah, somebody like me who edits fan fiction, who runs panels advising people on how to write fan fiction, who has talked repeatedly about the Mary Sues and how to avoid them, this starts ticking every single box. And as the series grows on, it only gets worse. I will be discussing this at length. I think next week, are we going to be at the Pandorica?
We've already done Pandorica, so next week should be
Okay.
Impossible Astronaut.
Okay. So yeah, it gets worse as the series goes on, to the point that Daleks fear her by name. Now I can understand Daleks fearing the Doctor, but no, not River.
Yeah, that's pretty much the
I mean,
atypical bullshit.
You had the Dalek begging her for mercy, and Daleks aren't programmed to know mercy. It's pretty much by the end of the series, River goes from Mary Sue to Super Sue, which is basically the superpowered Mary Sue. She's already on that border. She just waltzes across it by Pandorica opens. And by the end of Series 6, she's pretty much in God mode, Sue mode, because she can basically violate the laws of time because she's River.
And our file throws up at the screen because it's River.
Every time River makes an appearance, Moffat kind of kicks her up a few notches until the end of Series 6. And then he starts toning her down. I think he gets half a clue for Series 7. Most of her appearances in Series 7, save for...
Professor River Song is a standable character, as long as she sticks with her own fucking doctor. Dr. River Song is pretty much obnoxious, and River Song without a doctorate is extremely obnoxious. But she's still learning, so she's not quite as bad to stomach because she's still learning.
I don't know. Remember that this was pre-Professor River Song.
That's what I'm saying. Professor River Song is fine. Professor River Song is fine to deal with, as long as she's not with a pre-11 doctor because she'll insult him. Dr. River Song...
Well, she was even fine talking to 10. I didn't mind that. For somebody that's meeting somebody that you know very well, out of order, she was fine. She did not really rag on him.
Well, except for that whole, you're not the doctor yet. My doctor would have saved the day by now. Yada yada yada.
She didn't really do that.
She did that during.
You're so young.
She did that during. It was like climax-ish, when the doctor was trying to figure out what to do, and she was like, "Oh, you're being all emotional. My doctor would have saved the day by now." Type of deal.
I remember her saying that.
There might have been.
I remember her saying something vaguely to that idea.
In the episode, but she's like, well, that's when they talk about snapping the fingers to open the door.
Mm-hmm.
That's
yeah. There was a little bit of a twitch there, but it wasn't like a huge, long-winded one. Unlike her being smug here.
Yeah.
Here, she comes in right off the bat, basically just dismisses Matt Smith, and starts basically railing on him every single chance she gets. And that's just not right.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's
essentially, I mean, basically she gets to meet her husband before he likes her, so she can vent all of her frustrations about him on him there, when it's not going to make him mad.
And it's just not right for the character, because it just automatically puts you in the I don't like you box.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, by the end of this season, I'm kind of wishing she'd die in a fire.
And then you get a season all about her.
Yes, I could tell you, I ground my teeth when I discovered that. Let me tell you. But yeah, she is just annoying. She's over the top. She's egocentrical and smug. It's like, oh my God, she's Colin Baker. Oh my God. I don't know if I can look at that actress now without seeing Colin Baker's troll face.
Don't they have the same hair?
Yeah,
kind of.
To a degree.
Kind of.
They're both very large and flowy and yellow.
Now I'm going to do a Google image search for River Song in the multicolored Dreamcoat.
Oh no, I don't want that. I want to I want Matt to Photoshop a picture of Colin Baker's face over River songs, so it kind of looks like Colin Baker in drag. Picture it!
So the exact opposite of the image that I'm Googling right now.
That's the one that's stuck in my head. And it won't come out. I may have thrown up in my mouth a little.
Ew.
I don't think anybody has photoshopped River Song into Colin Baker's outfit. Kind of surprised.
But yeah, she is just such a arrogant, condescending egomaniac. And it doesn't make you like the character, which is part of the issue. Yet everybody's supposed to like her because she's River's.
You're supposed to feel pity on her because she's River Song and she's had such a hard life. Fuck her.
But we don't know. We don't know she's had a hard life until essentially next season.
But that's what people are saying after season 6. I'm already went. No, I don't care.
Yeah, that's the thing. I just finally when we got to the point where she started showing up dead, I'm just like, fine, good, you're dead, great. And I'm with Matt Smith. Don't have her show up during Capaldi, please. No.
If you bring her back, make her someone completely different.
Anyway.
At the very least.
Okay.
They could recycle her character.
River is a good chunk of what's wrong with this episode. The other half of what's wrong with this episode is the angels themselves.
Angels that do everything except send people back in time.
Yes, which is what they're supposed to do.
The one thing... You had one job, angels! One job!
Send people backwards in time and feed off their time energy, and you failed. You screwed it up.
So instead we have angels snapping people's necks, talking through their neural interface.
As if they were...
the Vashta Nerada. I mean, Jesus, did you get your monsters confused? The Vashta Nerada would have actually worked much better in this episode.
Actually, yeah.
And hell, in the same episode as the Vashta Nerada, you had an entity that was kidnapping people and keeping them in the internet, which is kind of what something that, creates copies of itself through a video feed might do.
Mm-hmm. But instead he chose the angels because the angels were more popular. Well, he fucking ruined them.
Don't get me wrong, the angels are still popular, but for all the wrong reasons.
Yes.
And for someone like me who was not as big of an Angel fan as most people in the first place, after this episode, I was pretty much unsold on them.
Yeah, that was just horrific what they did to them. And, part of, I mentioned this during Blink, is that part of what made them, scary was the fact that you never saw them move. And yes, during the end of it, you actually see their heads turn around.
During the part, when Amy's walking with her eyes closed.
With a horrific stone grindy sound when they move, too. It's like, God.
Yeah, I kind of forgot the point that they're not actually made of stone.
Right.
Yeah, they forgot the part that they're not actually made of stone, that they don't actually move slow enough to actually be heard very easily.
Mm-hmm. And all of that is what made them scary, and Moffat threw it all out the window. Oh.
Now, I'm curious, considering we talked about this a little bit with Blink. We were talking about essentially, rather than treating the fourth wall as an observer, they should have just used different cinematography to keep us from seeing the angels move. Now, what would you have gone with? How would you have considered that episode should have been? I mean, that scene should have been directed, as you had said, and shot.
There should have, considering the fact that at that time the angels had already started draining the power, there should have been just a series of blackouts where you start seeing them, move slightly with every kind of
blackout.
Not quite strobic flash, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see. Kind of like that scene in Blink, except without the annoying sting sound effect every time you saw the angel.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah, essentially they should have started doing that. Mm-hmm. But nope, Moffat wanted to be lazy.
I don't think it was so much lazy. I think he wanted to show off hey, we can make the angels move. We didn't just buy statues, but it hurts the effect.
It hurts the effect massively.
And this whole thing about the angel being inside Amy's mind and turning her into an angel was just like...
And that doesn't work at all for angels either.
The one idea that was a really good angel idea that does, the one reason why it makes sense to have the angels in this setting, if not with this story, is the whole thing about the maze of the dead being filled with angels without them realizing it.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure that's where Moffat... That's where Moffat started this episode. And then he wrote backwards and forwards and didn't write it that well.
Nope.
It just completely annoys me. And the fact that he can't even keep his own rules correct within the episode. So, all the angels fall into the crack, right? Which erases them from existence. They never existed, right?
Mm.
And that is why Amy can open her eyes and look around now, because that means the angel in her eyes was unmade.
Mm-hmm.
So, what Moffat forgot when he wrote this is that the angel also caused the spaceship to crash into the temple. If the angel was unmade, the spaceship would never have crashed. Secondly, it is stated also that the angels were the ones that wiped out the population of this planet.
That means the population of the planet would be back.
Only problem with that line of logic, if you go by the crack, the crack Amy's parents between scenes in the 11th hour, or before.
And Amy was still there
before the 11th hour, and Amy still existed. That is a consistent inconsistency in that you can kind of see the crack does one thing, but it doesn't. It's not as invasive.
Yeah, but that makes no sense. You can have it one way, or you can have it the other. You can't have your cake and eat it too.
I think the main point that they're trying to make with the crack is that it erases the memory of the person as long as you're actually part of that timeline.
Then the angel would still be in Amy's eye.
In which case, yeah, the fact that the angel's no longer in Amy's eye makes no sense.
It's weird, because originally they basically treated it as the reflection becomes an angel itself. But then, later on, a few scenes later, they started treating the angel as a part of the original angel, and then kept with that latter interpretation, even though that made no sense with anything that went before. Because first they said...
Because bad writing is bad.
First, the image of an angel becomes an angel, and now the image of an angel is an extension of the existing angel.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense. No matter which way you look at it, there's a writing issue there.
Right. What was I going to say, though? I was going to mention something, but I didn't want to interrupt your point. If I remember it, I'll bring it up. Oh, that's right. Another thing that doesn't make sense. Angel Bob. So they tore out his brain so he could... They tore out parts of his brain so he could speak. So did they plug his brain into the radio, or did they stick their own head into his mouth to speak? And
they never...
Way, when they showed up at the end, and he was, he's looking, all of the angels are in front of him. They're still speaking through the radio. They're not holding a brain. They're not holding a corpse. There's just no sign of Bob, but he's still speaking through the radio.
Yeah, I noticed that too. I'm like, what the fuck? And, if it's they're just speaking through him, why are they using Bob's mannerisms?
Yeah.
So, yeah, it doesn't make sense. A lot of this episode does not make any sense. And this isn't continuity issues.
There's no Bob, there's only Zool.
As a mention back to our lost podcaster, who would go on how continuity, didn't make any difference. This is not continuity separate to the series. This is continuity within its own script.
Yeah. What I think really happened is Moffat got the idea that, hey, I really like having the angel, having the monster answer the doctor, which, is a perfect thing to have Daleks and Cybermen and Centaurans do. But
and
it's
Vashta
not
Nerada.
It's not I mean, it works for one scene, Vashta Nerada, but if they did it the entire episode, it would suck.
Correct.
And it's not a good thing for the angels. I mean, if the angels are going to talk to the Doctor, they should, like, write him a message.
Mm-hmm.
They should not be speaking through Bob.
No.
And I guess maybe his voice was kept there for comic relief, but here's the thing. Even the little kids watching the episode did not need that.
Although, once again, it's another Moffat fetish of reusing human body parts.
But in this
Another
case,
weird Moffatism.
The body part was apparently invisible.
Yeah, but it's still mentioned that that's what he did. It's just something that Moffat does repeatedly.
Mm-hmm.
When I rewatch Day of the Moon, I'm going to spend the entire time looking for body parts now.
Yeah, you might want to. Because it's apparently a Moffat thing. It's happened repeatedly. I'm pretty sure we'll be seeing it again. Okay. So, yeah, the angels are written badly, and they don't make any sense logically wise. The clerics are never really given any general specification of what they're clerics of.
Nope.
The only thing I can think of is he knew that he was going to be using a church in the future, so he wrote the clerics into it without actually knowing what they were going to be yet. Sort of like we can pretty much tell he did with the Silence and probably did with River.
Although he mentions the headless monks in the museum.
Yes, but that's the thing. It's kind of hard to tell which came first, the plot bunny or the reference. It's like it's a whole. You get the impression that Moffat was basically writing down a whole bunch of ideas and then trying to make stories out of them after that. So he had this, here he has the idea of the headless monks, and he's going to try to write them into a story later. He has the idea of soldier clerics, and he's going to write a story about it later. And whereas here you see the idea, but what it comes into in retrospect is that this looks like it's probably the same church, which means that they kidnapped River's pregnant mother, had her give birth, brainwashed her, forced her to kill the Doctor, and then essentially were the ones who let her out of prison, but didn't treat it as, forgiving her. They instead treated themselves as being her, essentially, I don't know what you'd call it, but, they still treated her as a criminal, even though they knew that they were the ones that caused her to be in prison in the first place. So it just, not very good at all.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's
watching this after having also watched A Good Man Goes to War and The Wedding of River Song. I just kept picturing the bishop as the villain of this actual episode.
Mm-hmm.
You kind of wonder how much he knows about what happened in A Good Man Goes to War.
I don't think he does.
And the thing is, the guy writing him, I don't think knew what happened yet. I don't think Moffat knew the plot that far in advance. He knew parts of it. He had ideas. He knew that, Doctor Who was going to be an important question, but he didn't know the details.
He knew that at some point River would kill the Doctor.
Yes.
He just didn't have any of the details.
And he knew that soldier clerics would have something to do with the plot at some point.
Mm-hmm. But, yeah,
we also know he did not write well enough in advance that, Let's Kill Hitler was in on time.
Less said about that, the better.
Well,
Matt, I don't think has seen that yet.
Nope. But yeah, we'll be seeing it by the end of the month.
You have Netflix, right, Matt?
Yes, to my detriment.
Deal with it. Deal with it. We're going to have you do the summary.
Son of a bitch. Summary, this episode is stupid. The end.
I'm going to say in advance, because Randy is essentially our summary officer, the only episode I will not be willing to attempt to summarize is The Wedding of River Song, because... Yeah.
Brain hiccup?
That's fine. Matt can do it. We'll have him up there for summary execution.
Oh, so you want the same summary for the rest of the month, huh? Moffat fails at writing the end.
If he's doing summary execution, does that mean he gets to give a speech about how it's unjust? And then he gets replaced as an android?
If only it would be that awesome.
As I try to explain, all of a sudden I break down and you realize that it's an android and I'm running away in the background.
Matt, you have seen some of the worst movies in existence.
Some of the worst, yes.
I
would rate Ed Wood above Moffat's writing.
Oof.
Some of Moffat's writing.
Ow.
At this point, from what I have seen of season 7, I rate Ed Wood above his writing. Fuck Moffat.
I'll remind you, Matt, that Moffat wrote Day of the Doctor.
Yeah, that's one that he actually had time to do, though. For his regular televised writing compared to Ed Wood, I prefer Ed Wood.
The only person that Series 7 would convince me deserves to go well below Ed Wood is Stephen Thompson.
What did Stephen Thompson write?
Journey to the Center of the TARDIS.
Ugh.
Okay. Center of the TARDIS is a horrible, terrible piece of dreck. It is total smegworthy. It should have been burnt instead of made into a script. It is
worse than the Twin Element.
It is absolute total rubbish.
I like how you neither agree nor disagree.
But, what did he do before Journey?
Curse of the Black Spot.
Black Spot was okay. It wasn't great. It wasn't horrible. It was okay.
So he only does okay and horrible. Yay.
He also did what is apparently considered to be the worst episode of Sherlock.
And he's writing again this season, so we'll see. I give Moffat a chance every single time he writes an episode. It's just that frequently when he writes an episode, he disappoints me.
Yeah, he just tends to, he like 2 terrible episodes, 1 good one, and then 2 terrible episodes, and then 1 good one.
So we'll see, what Thompson does. We'll see what Ford does. We'll see what Gaddis does. Gaddis is another one that tends to disappoint me. Although Gaddis has been pretty regular on the disappointing because he's usually mediocre at best.
Yeah, I'm like, the best thing I can think of that he's done is The Unquiet Dead.
And that one I actually like. I love The Unquiet Dead, actually.
I don't dislike it. It's just compared to, in the grand scheme of Doctor Who, it's fairly unmemorable.
Have you gone back and watched it again since you've started watching Classic Who?
No, I have not.
You might want to consider doing that. Because now that you have some Classic Who under your belt, you can look at that and you can see why I look at it and go...
I'm thinking a month or so ago, I'm like, not a month, but like maybe 4 or 5 months ago, I might have rewatched all of Series 1 now that I think about it. So yeah, I might have rewatched.
Yeah, because I remember watching, Series 1 in 2005 when it came out and hitting The Unquiet Dead and going, man, this is the first time it feels like a classic episode of Doctor Who.
From what I hear, it's a partial remake of, was it Wang Chiang?
Not really. It's not really a partial remake of Wang Chiang that has nothing to do with Wang Chiang.
From what I hear,
it takes place at the same time.
Scenes.
No.
I'm gonna have to go back to the source.
It takes place in the same time period, so some people are going, "Oh, it's the same episode." No, piss off.
This was from someone that I expect to be a bit better about stuff. Let me see if I can find the line I'm thinking of.
Wah, wah, wah.
But it's not. It's that's not the issue.
Okay, the exact quote, and this is from Philip Sandiford. He says, consider that the third episode of the new series, Mark Gatiss' The Unquiet Dead, is nearly a straight lift of this story, with entire sequences being nothing more than light reskins of this. Even Sneed and Dickens seem like an attempt at a 21st century Jago and Light.
No. He's
Do you
wrong.
completely disagree with that?
I completely, totally, and utterly disagree with that. Summary.
I have not watched.
He's looking at Victorian era characters, partially Victorian era stereotypes, and going, "Oh, they're acting like Victorian era characters. They must be ripped from each other." So no, he's wrong there.
Okay. So I'll keep
compared to this episode, in particular, The Unquiet Dead is a brilliant piece of writing. It goes to show I would take Gatiss' Unquiet Dead over Time of the Angels.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would too.
Yeah. So, I have a little bit of hope looking at Gatiss. If he can write mediocre consistency and edit decently, put him in charge.
Come to think of it, I like Gatiss' second Doctor Who episode more than a lot of people do anyway.
The Idiot's Lantern? Is that a second? No. Okay, yeah. I didn't mind The Idiot's Lantern. I think used to do the Hungry imitation quite a bit.
Honestly, the biggest problem with The Idiot's Lantern is that it's very clearly written for Chris Eccleston. But there's only so much you can do about that.
There's bits of it that wasn't like, freaking Tennant coming out of the TARDIS in the frickin' moped. That part was written for Tennant, obviously. But I think it was rewritten from an Eccleston script.
Maybe.
Never even thought of that.
I mean, Davies was very fond of rewriting, so he might have been saying, "Hey, change that bit."
Oh yeah, there's
that's how we want David to come into the episode. But other than that,
I mean, if you look at a lot of the Doctor Who episodes, Dalek is my favorite of Series 6, and it's basically a rewrite of the audio drama Jubilee.
Technically, yes.
Rise of the Cybermen, Age of Steel, also two of my favorites from Season 2, were based loosely off of spare parts.
Dalek and Jubilee were the same writer, so...
Yes, they were. It was Shearman.
Just like Human Nature and Human Nature were the same writer.
Carnell. Yeah. Although that was a deliberate... I mean, that was, even more in your face than Dalek and Jubilee. It has the same name. It was basically the same script. Human Nature started as something Cornell had started to write for a later season of Doctor Who prior to it getting canceled. He finished it and wrote it as a novel, and then had the chance to turn it back into a script and fix all the problems he did with the novelization. Awesome. I love Human Nature, Family of Blood. It's one of my favorite in that series. I like it better than I like Blink. I will state that for the record right now. I think that Cornell's Human Nature, Family of Blood is better than Moffat's Blink. I know I am alone, virtually, in that particular statement, but...
Depends upon my mood, to be honest. If I'm in more of a horror mood, and I can leave my brain at the door, Blink is fun. If I'm more interested in a, more of an alien invasion type story, then Human Nature, etc., Family Blood are usually probably the better ones if I'm actually looking for something important to the seasonal story.
Okay.
That would be a more go-to episode than Blink.
So, let's get back to Time of the Angels.
I'm kind of thinking if Time of the Angels... Well, okay, you can't really separate the name from the story because both titles are angel names. But if you separate it into two separate stories, one story about the angels, the spaceship, the maze, and one story about the creatures that if you take a picture of them, it becomes them, and all that. I had them as two complete different stories and wrote them from the ground up that way. With the clerics maybe in the latter of the way I described it. I think that would have been the way to go with this, except it would have required probably another writer or Moffat to have had another week to write it.
Yeah, maybe. It sounds like it sounds like he had two different ideas and kind of hodgepodged them. And it didn't pay off.
And actually, even more now that I say that out loud, but I've been kind of thinking throughout this, I'm kind of wondering if this was written as a one-parter, and then Moffat was like, oh shit, I have this amount of time to get another episode into the season, and we're running out of budget, so I'm just going to
pad it out.
Turn this one-parter into a two-parter.
And, if he was having issues like that, that might be why, Series 7 turned out to be a whole bunch of one-parters. Although he just planned ahead of time going, no, we're just going to have individual episodes, so we don't have to worry about writing two-parters. Moffat may have decided that his writing style works better on a 45-minute script than it does an hour and a half. Although that wouldn't explain Sherlock.
True. I mean, granted, there is the one massive exception where he does a really great hour and a half story. But other than that, yeah, I'd kind of buy that.
I'm just trying to figure out where's his mentality going, But all I know is that this is a massive failure of an episode. The acting is okay. The special effects is okay. The directing could use a little work.
I'm also kind of wondering if, just looking at the pacing of the Moffat episodes in Series 5, I'm kind of wondering if he started writing Time of the Angels like, Russell did it, I can do it, except without the fart jokes. And then realized he couldn't do it.
That it was just a bad idea to start with?
Yeah. Because Russell kept an insane, ridiculous, Time Lordy schedule on his own. Never mind, and he didn't have Sherlock to worry about. He just had Doctor Who spin-offs.
Yeah, but he had them staggered properly, too. So that while Doctor Who was airing, he was writing for Torchwood, and while Torchwood was airing, he was writing for Sarah Jane, or the other way around, something like that.
And when he was writing for Totally Doctor Who, he was gritting his teeth and trying to find something to replace it with. Assuming he did any writing for TDW.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure how much writing was on TDW.
I know he wasn't a fan of it.
I'm not sure, what that was. I'm not actually sure what Totally Doctor Who was about.
I remember having seen descriptions of it, like comparisons that would be simple to describe if I can remember it, but it was basically your standard kids sketch show with very minimal effort put into it. Like, I remember it being pointed out, like, they had, trivia questions, except sometimes the answers were blatantly wrong because there was no effort put into it.
Oh, lordy.
Way to teach them kids.
I have no idea. We could be completely wrong about it, but, I've
never watched it. I've only seen other people talking about it. So,
as far as I knew, it never made it across the pond. I never actually saw it on any of the torrent sites that I used to get my confidentials from.
The only part of TDW that anybody actually remembers is, was it Dreamland or the other one? Which one was part of TDW?
The Infinite Quest.
The Infinite Quest, okay. Yeah. Which was what, 10 6-minute episodes, essentially?
Something like that. I know you can get the Infinite Quest on DVD now. By itself. You can also get Dreamland by itself on DVD too. But either way, we're still looking at, let's see, direction wrong. Acting was okay. I mean, Amy had a bit to do in this, especially,
Yeah.
trying to act as she had an angel taking over her mind.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody needed to give Alice Kingston some Prozac.
For dry, red eyes, try clear eyes.
Oh, and this is another episode where we saw Matt Smith in more of a rage mode than I think we expected to see him.
Yeah.
And of course, and granted, he was pissed off at the same character that we were. Well, okay, he was yelling at her. She's not the only reason he was pissed off.
No. It's obvious that River enjoys pushing the Doctor's buttons. The thing is, she just takes it too far. Way too far. Way too far to make her an enjoyable character for me. Okay.
Yeah, like a lot of companions have some of the traits River has, just don't dial all of them up to 11.
Yeah.
Whereas River dials some of them up to 12.
And that's the thing. Moffat is very much black or white with his characters. They're either all the way up or they're bland.
Which is why River comes off as really needing some lithium sometimes, because she really does have swings between some of her episodes.
That's why I said Prozac.
I don't know much. Wait, I thought
Prozac is used to treat bipolar disorder.
Is it? Okay.
They don't give lithium anymore.
No.
I know. I still have the shakes to prove it.
Oh, I know a couple of people who are on it.
Well, if they do, that has to be highly regulated. I was on lithium for severe depression back in the 90s. I used to have surgeon's hands. The rock solid surgeon's hands, and I have a slight tremor in my hands now to this day.
That explains why someone I know who said the only thing that's worked for her was lithium had a doctor that refused to prescribe it to her.
Yes. When I was on it, I would hold a pitcher of water to take to bed with me. By the time I got to my bed, the pitcher would be half empty. Because my hands were shaking that badly. It's not a good thing.
I mean, it's better than non-treatment, of course, but
yes, but
at what cost?
The fact that I could have been a neurosurgeon right now, had it not been for lithium.
I was not familiar with that particular side effect.
Oh, yes.
I seem to recall being led to believe that there were no side effects, but I don't.
Don't ever let the drug companies tell you there are no side effects. There's always side effects.
Well, I think that was also because medication was something that we very lightly covered in irregular psychology, because it was focused on other forms of treatment rather than the ones that you actually need to go to medical school to treat people with. So I think it was just glossed over. Here's how you treat it, move on.
Yeah.
Anyway, not to go into a psychiatry course. Do we have a time check? Because I think we might be getting close.
We got another few minutes before we have to go to final thoughts.
Yeah, we got at least 10 minutes.
Okay. I wasn't sure when we started streaming.
We started late.
It was about 100 minutes ago, I think. Ish.
It's, by the way, hand tremor is number 4 under the very common side effects for lithium.
Gotcha. What was I? Damn it!
Also, decreased memory. That could explain a lot.
I had a thought and I immediately lost it.
Sorry?
Decreased memory. Like, it popped up and then it literally popped. Oh, So what do we think of the Angels feeding off, 1, radiation from the engine, and 2, the time crack?
The radiation from the engine could be possible if the engine was using some kind of time distortion engine.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. Because I'm sitting here like, if it was just like nuclear power plant radiation, I don't see how that has anything
that
to do with
shouldn't be.
Yeah,
they
if
treat
it's
it like they treat it like it is to the rest of the people. You know?
well, to be honest, even if it was time-based radiation, it could still be fatal to humans in wrong doses, in particular places. So it still could be dangerous to any humans. So
I'm just
Sarah
speculating.
Kingdom die? Didn't Sarah Kingdom die to time radiation or something?
I
Or
thought
was that something else?
I thought
No,
she died.
Sarah-
She died.
I thought she died due
from
to the vacuum in space. Oh no, sorry, wrong. I'm thinking Katarina. Sarah Kingdom
Yeah,
died due to the
She was-
time distorter. Was that what it was called? This time
Yeah, it
destroyer.
rapidly aged her.
Oh no,
yeah,
the time
yeah,
destructor.
the time destructor, something like that, some sort of time weapon the Daleks used.
Yeah, but it was
Oh.
it was specifically a time weapon designed as a WMD.
So yes, time.
And it was
radio-
also it also killed Daleks, if I remember right.
Yes, it did, and it tried to kill the Doctor, but the Doctor somehow managed to pull through.
Because it's the Doctor.
Mm-hmm. He is a Time Lord.
And it wasn't the Daleks that did it. It was it was the Doctor that activated the time destructor.
I think that might have been the last ditch thing, so that it took out some Daleks with it and couldn't get used against anybody else. Possibly.
Well, no, the Doctor activated the destructor. He had told all of his companions to go back to the TARDIS, but Sarah didn't listen
Gotcha.
and followed him, not knowing that his whole plan was, "Hey, I'm a Time Lord. Click, I can deal with
Right.
this." But no, that's a completely different matter. Yeah. The thing is, though, they're like, take these pills, take this shot. You should be okay from the radiation. I'm like, okay, that sounds like your standard.
Right. I'm like, what kind of radiation? Like, either what kind of radiation is that, or what kind of shot?
Yeah.
And of course,
They never really explain it. They just say radiation.
2014, I have to look at it like, wow, conservatives in favor of a vaccine. But that's just paying too much attention to Facebook.
But no, it's like they never, and that's a standard Moffat issues. He doesn't really explain how the Angels can feed off it. He doesn't consider the fact that we've seen the Angels before, and what they feed off of was time energy. But by the next episode, they're back to feeding off of time energy.
And I think by the next episode of this, Age of an Angel doesn't become an angel anymore.
The theme for this episode is boom, 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 boom. Whoa.
No, I meant the same. I mean, in the same, part two.
Two-parter. You're not talking about the next story. You're talking about in the same two-parter.
Yes. Yeah. By that point, they're because they try to feed off the time energy of the crack.
Yeah. We're feeding off the crack. I'm seeing it. It makes sense because it's not just time energy, it's time distortion, which is what they do. So it makes sense that it's what feeds them.
Yeah,
Except
it doesn't.
Then of course it eats them back. But
yeah, it doesn't make sense to me about why why they would be powered off of the radiation.
And this is something I've seen in other things with black holes and such. How do they get the idea that feeding something big to the crack is going to make it less hungry, as though it were alive?
I'm not sure. It's overload.
Feeding the Doctor, it's just like throwing something massive into a black hole isn't going to decrease its pull yet so much of sci-fi seems to think it will. And this is the exact same type of thing. How is feeding time-space distortion into a time-space crack going to make it less of a time-space distortion?
Maybe it was supposed to counteract the cause. I don't know. It's not really. It's that part of it's not really written well.
It's Moffat hand-waving again. It's not explained. Doesn't need to be explained. Hand-waving.
That part of the episode wasn't written very well.
This would have been also a great point to mention Artron energy, but they didn't. You know, why Amy can, is still remembering them even though the crack destroyed them is because basically she's protected by a field of Artron energy from being a time travel.
Which, it's mentioned without being mentioned.
Yeah.
You mentioned it's because she's a time traveler.
And that would have been a great thing to use. It's because the sheer amount...
Because the Artron energy wouldn't have worked into the series finale, which is what they were building for. The whole idea that Amy remembers things differently and is therefore able to use that to reshape the universe.
Yeah, I've never been a big fan of that little bit of Moffat's.
No, but I'm just saying, it's what he's writing, so writing something that distracts from it wouldn't have worked.
But still, what I mean is that it could have been a sideways thing. That's because why it would have overloaded the crack was the sheer amount of Artron energy surrounding the Doctor.
That's true.
It would have been a proper Chekhov's gun.
If they did that, it would have been less destructive to the plot than the last time someone tried to introduce a sci-fi concept into a largely fantasy sci-fi series and caused thousands of people to cry out in anger because they don't like midichlorians. Which I personally have no problem with because I can easily reconcile it with lots of...
Wow. Comparing Stephen Moffat's writing to George Lucas's writing. I'm not sure who should be insulted there.
Well,
the fans, Randy. The fans should all be insulted.
George had 20 years to write The Phantom Menace.
And he still managed to fail.
Moffat only had a few weeks probably to write this episode. Or a year.
I'm sure he had more than about a month, at least, to write this down.
I don't know. He spent a good chunk of the 20 years stumping for money. And then investing it in Howard the Duck, and then stumping for more money.
Howard the Duck is pure cheese. I have yet to watch it. I actually do have a copy of it.
How are you going to describe it and then be like, I have yet to watch it?
It's pure cheese from what I've seen of it.
It's
I also have I also have a collection of the early Howard the Duck books. They're amusing.
Yeah, you'll be disappointed in the movie. Anyway.
Probably will be, from what I've seen.
It's now midnight, so I think we should probably move on to our final thoughts.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so let's start with Bill, because I feel like it.
Time of the Angels, Flesh and Stone is a two-parter that's names should have been switched, but wasn't due to lazy. That had a lot of some good ideas for Angels, some good ideas for not Angels, and combined them to become terrible ideas for Angels. And it is a mixture of good and terrible pretty much everywhere.
Okay. Matt.
Well, it is a mixture of good and terrible. The terrible tends to be what most people remember it for, at least in our circles. It is. There are some genuine good ideas, and there is some good acting and some decent direction. But then there are these terrible ideas that overcloud anything that was decent that came out of this poor thing.
Erin.
It could have used some Boringers.
Yeah. Man, it just drags for me, especially the part where she's sitting in the forest with the clerics and they're disappearing one by one. You just gotta kind of stumble around. I wasn't scared at all during that moment. There's not a lot of tension to it for me. It's some interesting ideas. I would like to see a different monster used, like people have been saying. Like, I would have loved to see the Nymans brought back. I think they would have fit a lot better
I don't
into
think
the
they had
story.
the budget for the costume at the time.
Well,
Still,
they could have,
they could have tried
if they
something
were
better.
clever. If they were clever with their cinematography, they could have pulled it off.
Or if they would have been clever and rewritten that stuff quickly before they actually went to execution.
Well, that wouldn't have given them budget for a new monster.
Yeah,
No, but they could have used the current plan.
I would remind you that year was 2010, and that was the first year that Doctor Who had its budget
And
cut by the BBC.
Now that I think about it, I've been thinking the entire time trying to figure out how much the angels cost, but then I realized that if they just did a plaster cast of each angel and painted over it, it was probably pretty cheap compared to buying actual statues, so this could have been done on the cheap as a result.
Yeah, that's the thing. They already had a good chunk of Weeping Angel statues, and easy plaster things. A lot of the costuming budget in this particular season went to A, the new Daleks, the Sentai Daleks of Fail, and B, the Silurian costumes, which you got to admit are pretty good.
They are a nice upgrade.
Yeah. That's where most of the costuming budget went. I think with them planning on the Silurians and redesigning the Daleks, they didn't think they could afford a whole new revamp of a classic monster.
Although I would argue the point of the Silurians and agree with the amount of Hagen that I would have preferred an upgraded version that looks more like the classic Silurians, but given the choices.
From what I understand, the new Silurian costumes are a lot closer to what the writer of the Silurians had in mind in terms of the characterization and expressiveness. They just couldn't afford that type of advanced costume.
In 1970.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I've seen the design plans they had for a revamped original classic, and it would have been pretty cool still.
Well,
but then again, with budget cuts, they probably couldn't have afforded that either.
They kind of went the DS9 route with it, and I'm fine with that.
Because from what I understand, the version that they really wanted to do would have been looking more like the classic, but it had like animatronic heads and stuff. So yeah, they probably couldn't afford that.
And actually, in retrospect, it's good that they didn't, because that this way gives them more actor versatility. Anyway, something that Erin mentioned that reminded me. Every of you remember that when the Doctor was running off to the primary control room, leaving Amy behind, and then a moment later he's there talking to Amy? Anybody notice anything about that particular scene?
Don't recall.
The Doctor had lost his coat to an angel earlier in that episode.
Yes, that's true.
And when he's talking to Amy
again later,
and when the Doctor is talking to Amy again, he's wearing the coat. You can just see it on the ends.
So that
and then when they cut to the Doctor,
gets rid of our whole, it's not as invasive of a crack. It doesn't delete your children and such.
Actually, what do you mean?
Well, assuming that we're going to say that the plot hole, the crack, ate the angel, which caused him to have his coat back.
Nope, I'm not. I'm not going there at all. The Doctor
I'm just trying to explain it in universe.
The Doctor that was talking to Amy was not the same Doctor that was traveling to the primary control room. The Doctor that was talking to Amy there was the Pandorica Doctor.
Ooh.
But then we later see him talk. Wait.
He tells her to remember what he said in her room. That whole scene there, and this is something I will give Moffat freaking credit for. It's the freaking scene in Star Trek II where Spock holds up to McCoy's head and goes, "Remember," right before dying.
Shabing.
I'm going to have to rewatch that because I'm see how that doesn't physically work, because the Doctor, when you see the Doctor talking to Amy, Or you're saying when he physically talks to her, not over the radio, you're just physically.
Yes.
So you're saying
Just
basically he
ran
pops
off.
in, shows up in the forest, runs up to her, talks in her ear, and then runs back to the TARDIS and disappears. Or uses the vortex manipulator.
No, there's no vortex manipulator there. It's not that point. It's the point that the Doctor is going back through his timeline.
Oh, you're saying from the Big Bang, not...
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Like the ending sequence of the Big Bang.
Correct.
Hmm.
It's a
The
Chekhov's
question
gun,
is-
and I have to give Moffat a little bit of credit on that.
Now the only question is he missing any props? Because
He didn't have
Well,
any props at
Fez-
the time.
the Fez was already burned by that point, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
And he
then
also
now
just
He had
dropped
already
the
gotten
mop.
rid of the mop.
So that's fine as long as he's in the same costume, which I'd have
Yes.
to...
Which he was, yes.
Yes.
Have you watched The Big Bang recently?
No, I have not, but he was in his standard costume at the end of Big Bang. I remember that much.
Mm-hmm.
Is 10 the only Doctor that seems to randomly change tiny bits and pieces on a regular basis then?
Well, he only changed his tie, and then he had the blue suit that started in Series 3 as an alternate suit.
I guess like which coat and which everything seems to be... Yeah.
11th seems to randomly change the bow
Unless
tie
he
just
changed it
slightly,
up-
and he also
unless-
changes undershirts.
Like unless he changed it up just often enough to make it seem like he was changing a lot.
I don't know.
Which might be the case. I just seem to think that from episode to episode, you could usually pinpoint the episode by looking at which shirt he's wearing, which tie, and which blazer, and whether or not he's wearing the coat.
Anyway, we were at final thoughts.
Yes.
Um,
believe we covered them all.
that's fine.
We do everyone
So-
except Randy. Yeah.
Yeah, and I've been saying that yes, this episode is pretty much wrong, and 90% of what's wrong with it is the writing. There's a little bit of directing gaffes on it, but pretty much it's Moffat's fault here. Like I said, I think he had two concepts that he tried to mash together, and it didn't work. He completely failed to remember which powers he did and didn't give his creatures from the previous episode. He
For some reason.
fails to follow through in his own continuity within the episode, which is a bad writing mistake. All in all, this is very disappointing. I was pretty much turned off from this episode within the first 5 minutes of it, and it didn't get much better during it. And yes, this is when I went from feeling kind of ambivalent about River Song to absolutely God-hating her. So ratings. Bill.
Kind of hard to take this holistically because it's very easy to completely destroy it on the writing, which is what I tend to look at as the most important part, whereas the general audience would probably view it as, if not the least important part, close to it. So I'm still, I think what else I've given it to, and see if it's better or worse than that. I think I gave the Twin Dilemma a 2. And Time and the Ronnie I might have also given a 2. And I think we voted against using quarter stars last week.
Correct.
So
Either feel
Just-
if you're gonna try to give it if you want to try to give it a quarter, see if you feel slightly favorable or less favorable, and round accordingly.
I think because of the I'm going to lean down just because of the long-term negative impact that scene with River had on my and many other people's feelings about the following season and a half. So because of that, I'm going to go for the 2.
Okay. Matt?
I also would argue that, in particular with video medium, if you don't have a good story for a story-based series, that it's already falling apart in the worst way possible. no amount of Flash, unless it's supposed to be a dumb action movie, will make up for it. And Doctor Who is not meant to be a dumb action movie. So the writing is a huge scar against it. A lot of just really lacklusterness of this particular two-parter just overwhelms me every time I try watching it. Also the cheapness. I can't blame them on the cheapness. It was a thing that was happening at the time, but just mind-bogglingly bad. So
what are
I
you
was
saying,
watching.
What are you saying that's particularly cheap about this episode?
they had to go with the angels, and they got the angels wrong. And
you're
then
just
they
saying
also
the
the
choice
fact that
of
they
the
could easily
monsters
pop out the
because the budget
angels
was
when
high?
they could have easily done something else,
Sorry.
or
So
easily
okay.
rewritten so the angels would fit better in time. Is another thing they could have easily have done, but they didn't. So it also screams of lazy.
I was actually watching somebody's blog earlier defending Stephen Moffat and saying how good the special effects were compared to the Tennant era, and I started laughing.
Well, the thing is,
Yeah.
I mean, they make more of an effort to make the effects look realistic. The lighting in say 2005 was an entirely different lighting style than in 2010. And I do tend to prefer the visual style of 2010 a lot more.
But then you get the CG monsters that look like they're not even on set at all.
Yeah.
But I'm like,
That's the thing. He mentioned the CGI in particular, and I'm like, no.
but there's also, I mean, the Eccleston Tennant, the RTD era also had a lot of angry CGI bowls of pudding.
Yeah, the CGI was more hit or miss, but when the CGI was on in the RTD era, it was great. Again, I have to go back to the werewolf in Tooth and Claw, which took my breath away.
And any flying Dalek, to be modest.
The fact that I prefer not all of but much of the visual style of essentially the Moffat show in terms of what they were going for compared to what RTD was going for visually goes a long way toward me saying I prefer the effects of the Moffat show, not necessarily because they're better, but because they're more how I would want it to look.
Yeah.
I kind of feel that way too.
Anyway,
like Moffat's visual style.
Anyway, Matt, you were giving your score.
Yeah. So the lackluster attempt to just throw the angels in here for the first half and then finally getting them right in the second half. The really horrible padded out writing, the lack of any tension. Yeah, this is a 2. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. It's definitely a 2.
All right, Erin?
I would give it a 2 as well.
Okay, just because of just pure So
Yeah,
I think for once we are all in complete and utter agreement.
It's a 2.
I was going to give it a 2.
So,
I was going into this planning to give it a 2, and you all gave it a 2.
What you're saying is that this episode is a giant deuce.
Yes.
And on that bombshell.
Not that bombshell. We will see you all next week
With
when
Richard
we.
Nixon.
Yes, with Richard Nixon. Brrr. He is not a crook. Yes.
I'm not a crook. I will try your Nixon.
And he is not yet writing the decapitated body of Spiro Agnew.
I got that reference.
So I believe it should be more or less the same time, give or take, our usual lag time it takes to get things going.
Mm-hmm.
On the 18th. And that is what's the name of the episode? It's season 6, so I stopped paying perps.
The Impossible Astronaut and Day of the Moon,
Okay.
which is treated as a 2-parter, although it really is 2 completely different episodes. So if we only do one, we really can't only do one because The Impossible Astronaut has little enough plot that it makes more sense to do the 2-parter as together.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's fine. Did you have it planned as a 2-parter?
Yeah, it's generally considered to be a 2-parter.
Because I believe we're going to be finishing when we hit the wall, so...
Yeah.
Yep.
So
Gotta go with the plan. The plan's in action.
So yeah, it's not this week, but the week after that Matt starts seeing the rest of season 6. Oh.
Can I borrow somebody's gun? I'm gonna shoot my PlayStation 3.
No, but
Yay, more Riverside.
if you really need it, I'll mail you some Malox.
I'd rather watch freaking Ed Wood movies right about now.
Come on, Matt. You're a reviewer. Suck it up. You're a reviewer. That means that you do review things you don't like because it's on the agenda.
I'd rather watch Manos.
So come on, suck it up there, Siskel.
That's what they need. Epic rap battles of history. Ed Wood versus, I don't know, Claudio Fragasso, Michael Bay.
Suggested. They take suggestions.
Yeah, I know.
How about Ed Wood versus Charles Band?
Anyway, we will see you next week as we kind of go to our post Gab session.
Yay. See you all later.